Level 14 has just been confirmed for the next Clash Royale update. Oh, and there's also a Triple Elixir tournament too. Hey guys, Legendaray here, and welcome back to another Clash Royale video. In the first part of this video, I'm going to be going over Clash Royale's first update sneak peek, where they have now confirmed level 14 to be coming in the next Clash Royale update. In the second part of this video, well, I'm going to be going over the top 5 Triple Elixir decks to run in the upcoming Triple Elixir Global Tournament. Of course, with 25,000 gold up for grabs, you definitely want to do as well as possible. But before we get into the video, if you could please leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Also, use code Legendaray in the shop. You get the dealio. Let's get right into level 14. Level 14 is officially confirmed for the next Clash Royale update, and that will affect everything, which includes player level 14, level 14 crown and princess towers, as well as, of course, level 14 cards. Now let's start off by talking about player level 14. Ever since you actually unlocked level 13 in Clash Royale, Supercell has been keeping track of how much XP you have actually gained. So depending on how long you have been a level 13 player, there's a very good chance that you actually already have enough experience to automatically be level 14 once the next update releases. Of course, with player level 14 comes new level 14 towers, and with those, the stats are on screen right now for those of you that are interested. Last but not least, of course, we have the level 14 cards. Now, it seems like this will just be an additional level that you will have to save up cards for, and you will have to spend gold to upgrade. Now, the one downside to this is that, yes, you will have to collect more cards and actually spend gold to get that upgrade from level 13 to level 14. So to accommodate for this, Supercell actually is decreasing the upgrade costs of several of the lower levels. More specifically, you will now need less cards to complete the upgrade from level 11 to level 12, as well as from level 12 to level 13. So even though you are going to have to collect slightly more copies of a card in order to complete the level 14 upgrade, it's not going to be that drastic of an increase. The same applies to the cost of the upgrade. In fact, after this next update rolls out, upgrading a card to level 11, level 12, or to level 13 will now be a little bit cheaper as well. Of course, not as cheap as they are during Clash Royale, so definitely take advantage of this event while you can. So there we go, level 14 has officially been announced. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section below. Keep in mind that this is just the first initial sneak peek. There will be more information coming in the future, so definitely stay tuned on this channel for more news-based videos. And with all that out of the way, let's get right into the decks. Number 1, Lava Hound Control. Now, Lava Hound Control, especially this variation with the 2 medium spells, is probably going to be one of the most common decks that you're going to be facing in the upcoming Triple Elixir Global Tournament. So hey, you can't beat them? Join them. This Lava Hound deck is really easy to play, especially in the Triple Elixir environment, where you simply cannot get punished for a 7 Elixir commitment. So starting out the match, I am very aggressive. I'm always going to be cycling something, may that be passively like a Goblin Cage, or aggressively like a Lava Hound immediately in the back. The goal of this deck in Triple Elixir is to be as aggressive as possible. You're always going to be in the driver's seat of the match, building up a Lava Hound push and supporting it with all of your spells and all of your spam. So starting off by breaking down the offense, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Of course, the 2 dragons are useful for both tankage and splash damage. The flying machine is useful for any ranged damage, and then the 2 medium spells will almost ensure that any counter the opponent has, you'll be able to take out almost instantly. Like, to be completely honest, the double spell combination is just so effective, and it's definitely going to be something that you want to take advantage of, but you also have to be prepared to face. Speaking of which, you really do have to watch out for spell value. If you take a look at the cards in this deck, a lot of them are very weak to medium spells, such as the lightning, the poison, and the fireball. So it's very important to space your units out in an offense so that your opponent will not be able to take everything out in a single go. Moving on to the defense of this deck. First off, the best way to play defense in Triple Elixir is with an offense. But if you do have to defend, Inferno Dragon and Baby Dragon are there to take care of tanks and swarms. Goblin Cage is very useful to pull any building targeting units. And then the Valkyrie is just such a tanky unit. Very well worth the 4 elixir cost. All in all, very aggressive, very fast-paced deck, despite the 4.6 average elixir cost. Number 2, Double Spawner Spam. Now, Double Spawner Spam has been a deck that has just dominated Triple Elixir for the longest time, and even in this current meta, it is still very, very solid. Now, an equally effective variation actually runs the Royal Recruits instead of the Mega Knight, so that's just something that you can keep in mind. But starting off, this deck is all about that spam. You want to get as many spawners down as possible. However, a lot of Triple Elixir decks have now evolved to counter some of these double spawner decks, and they are running two medium spells, such as the Lava Hound deck that I shared before. In those cases, you're probably going to have to switch lanes quite often. Whichever side the opponent decides to play their spells, you're going to want to start playing your spawners in the opposite lane. So starting off in this deck, if you have a spawner down, you're always going to play it down. A big element of this deck is not necessarily overwhelming your opponents with spawner units, but to also get chip damage over time with the Furnace as well as the Goblin Hut. Aside from that, your other 4 units are going to be played pretty defensively focused. So breaking down the defense, of course, Mega Knight is your big tank, and you're going to use his drop damage to take down any sort of squishier units. Cannon Cart and Flying Machine are your 2 ranged high output damage, and then the Mother Witch is useful for any of those tiny swarm units. One important synergy to take advantage of here is the element of Spellbait. If you take a look at the cards in this deck, they are all cards that the opponent need to use medium spells on. The spawners, the Flying Machine, the Cannon Cart, the Mother Witch. Use this sort of spellbait to your advantage so that if your opponent uses their medium spell on one of those units, then you can use any of the other ones as freely as you want. On the offensive end, even though you're mostly trying to get damage with spawners, there are also cases where you have to apply immediate pressure at the bridge. You have some slower units that are still very, very effective, such as the Mega Knight, the Cannon Cart, and the Flying Machine. And also keep in mind that you have 2 medium spells, which are very useful for a potential spell cycle towards the end of the match. Number 3, Heka Graveyard. Now, Pekka Graveyard is definitely an interesting deck for the Triple Elixir game mode, and surprisingly, this is going to be played very, very aggressively, just like any of the other decks. There are definitely a couple types of pushes that you can build in this mode. The first is a classic Graveyard push with just a cheap tank, such as the Dark Prince, followed up by the Graveyard, and maybe even a Freeze. This is probably what you're going to be doing most of the time. In fact, even a naked Graveyard followed up by a Freeze is going to get lots of good chip damage if you can cycle that Graveyard over and over again onto your opponent's tower. A second type of push that you're going to be doing is just a beatdown style push. Because a lot of decks the opponents are running are very tanky, Lava Hound, if the opponent plays a Lava Hound in the back, well then you can just immediately play a Pekka at the bridge in the opposite lane. You want to apply maximum pressure to force your opponents to spend their elixir defending your push. The E-Wiz is very useful to reset any sort of charging units such as the Baby Dragon. The Executioner can take care of swarms, and again, use the Freeze or the Poison to try to get that Pekka to the tower as best as possible. On the defensive end, you're definitely going to have to pull a couple of tricks to get a successful defense. Now, how successful your defense is going to be revolves around how effective you'll be able to use one specific card, and that is the Executioner. This guy is probably going to be your most important unit on defense. So of course, lining all the opponent's troops up properly, combining that Executioner with a Tornado, and even using a defensive Freeze to stall the opponent's push is going to be your best bet at taking out your opponent's pushes. That being said, however, you still have the Pekka for big tanks, you still have the Dark Prince for a good amount of splash damage, and the E-Wiz is there as well to reset things such as the Inferno Dragon or the Sparky. Number 4, Heka Control. Now, this is a Pekka Control deck that I actually haven't seen a lot in Triple Elixir, but it's played very, very aggressively. It is probably one of the cheaper decks as well, and with that means you're going to be constantly cycling your cheap cards. At the start of the match, I'm always cycling something quick, may that be a Furnace in the center, or a Miner or a Royal Ghost to the opponent's tower. After that, I'm just going to be constantly cycling these cheap units, getting chip damage onto the tower over and over again, and the goal here is to to prevent your opponents from being able to build up the big pushes they want. Again, if they play something big, such as a Lava Hound in the back, the same types of pushes apply. A quick minor flying machine or a quick Royal Ghost push and the opposite lane will do just fine, and you can even go in with just a Pekka at the bridge to apply pressure. Of course, the poison and the arrows are going to be very effective as well, but more often than not, I'm actually going to be saving these spells to be used on defense. Speaking of the defense, this is another deck where the best form of defense is actually offense. Even if the opponent has a big push coming your way, you're always going to be cycling something in the opposite lane. May that be a miner, a Royal Ghost, or even a furnace, so that it will constantly be spawning those spirits that will chip at your opponent's tower. This again serves the purpose of breaking up your opponent's pushes, but it will also be very useful for spell bait, baiting out the opponent's medium spells, which will actually allow you to use some of your weaker units on defense. So on a defense, you're most often going to be relying on the flying machine and the E-Wiz, which is why it's very important to bait out those medium spells. And again, you're going to really want to rely on the poison and the arrows to do a lot of the defensive work as well. Pekka is definitely useful on defense in certain matchups, but it is a pretty expensive card, so I usually refrain from actually playing the Pekka all that often and will instead focus on cycling some of my cheaper units to maintain a form of aggression. All in all, it's a very high pressure chip style deck that I'm sure a lot of you guys will enjoy, so definitely a top choice for this global tournament. Number 5, Balloon Freeze. And of course, we have to share my favorite Balloon Freeze deck. Now, in this current Triple Elixir meta, this is actually a rather difficult deck to play, but if you know what you're doing, this is going to be an extremely deadly option. Now, just like the Pekka Control deck I shared earlier, it's going to be on the cheaper side of decks that you're going to face, so it's actually going to be played very aggressively. Starting off the match, I will generally just react to the opponent's first play, but after that, I'm going to immediately start applying pressure to the opposite lane. The reason is because the opponent is likely going to have very solid answers, such as the lightning. So in terms of offense, what do you got? Well, of course, you have the Lumberjack Balloon Push, which is a quick, immediate way to apply pressure, and you can use both the freeze as well as the tornado to try and get those troops to the tower as quickly as possible. Ideally, this pressure will force out a significant response from your opponent, so they won't be able to build up a big push, but if they do, of course, you're gonna have to pull off some trickery on defense. Now, because more often than not, the opponent will have something such as a lightning, it's very important that you never allow your opponents to get a spell value on both of your dragons. So make sure that you either only play one of them at a time, or you bait out the opponent's big spell before you start playing your 2 dragons. In addition, it's going to be so important to use your 2 spells on defense as well. If you want to win a match, you're gonna want to master how to use a defensive freeze as well as a defensive NATO. Against ground units, you also have a couple of options. The bowler and the lumberjack are both insanely solid, and again can be comboed with the tornado and the freeze. Last but not least, never be afraid to go into some sort of tower race situation. This deck is very good at applying opposite lane pressure, so sometimes if you find that you're just unable to defend a push, just go into the opposite lane and try and force a tower trade situation. So there we go, a brief overview of level 14 as well as the top 5 decks to run in the upcoming Triple Elixir Global Tournament. Best of luck to you guys in the arena, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.